2 years ago this week, all of a sudden I'm getting these text messages from my office saying there's a social worker who needs me to call her. Okay, I immediately assume I have a family member that needs bail money. I call the social worker, and the first words out of the mouth was, "Are you going to come pick it up?" Pick up what? Apparently, the birth mother of the little girl we had adopted 6 years earlier had walked into the hospital. What is this? No prenatal care, substance abuse, and had a little boy. Little boy was very small and going through withdrawals. So this is him exactly 2 years ago. And one of the greatest things that's ever happened in our lives. But before we were able to walk out of that hospital with him, it turns out an adoption agency worker had gotten the birth mother to sign a piece of paper. Now remember, the birth mother just said, "Hey, the Schweikerts had adopted my little girl. You know, this is the brother. Wouldn't that be nice if they could be together?" We were told we had to sign a piece of paper for $40,000 before we were allowed to walk out the door with the baby, because the baby belonged to the adoption services. How does a middle-class family ever adopt with these types of costs? Ms. Hilton actually said something that was brilliant. It's about the money. How many others here have gone through the certification to be a foster parent? My wife and I spent years and years and years trying to adopt, and it is stunning. It's maybe a combination of fertility rates have collapsed, but we spent years and a couple heartbreaking, just almost devastating failed adoptions. As you start to look at 4B, I know there's flexibility in it, but I would encourage the policymakers here. And Mr. Gee, you're going to have some of the expertise in this. Something that's actually much more unified. And then here's my point of heresy. 30 years ago, there was a national movement to fixate on family reunification. Having gone through the foster classes, having actually looked at the numbers, maybe our priority needs also to be the child and the child's welfare and the child's future. When you have people like my wife and I, we've done okay in life. I have really bad choices in career paths, but, and yet, but my point is, if you're really trying to find a unified theory of everything from the adoption side to the foster care side to those who have parents who are incarceration, stop doing it in silos. And the priority, number one priority of our society needs to be those kids. We don't have a lot of them. We have schools closing all over the country because there's not enough children. Mr. Gee, I love the Dave Thomas organization. They do incredibly moral work. I'm adopted. All my siblings are adopted. My little boy's third generation adopted, so is my little girl. Am I off my rocker thinking two things? Unified approach, so it's more than just 4B, but it's also maybe we need to step up the prioritization of protecting the child and its future from even some of the others. And I know that's heresy in the common folklore.
So I say this representing the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption. When we consider what is best for children, for the vast majority of children, reunification is what is best. We also need to invest in high-quality adoption. The Wendy's Wonderful Kids program, which is the signature initiative of the Dave Thomas Foundation, has led to more than 14,000 children achieving permanency that would not have done so without. 700 of those kids, this was their last chance of finding a home, were reunified. They were never actually given a chance at reunification sufficient so that when they were ready to be adopted, there was still the opportunity to reunify them. So I think we don't want to play adoption against reunification. And you're right, we do need a unifying framework. What is in the best interest of children?
We're up against time. How common is our family's experience of you're not allowed to take the child home unless you have the cash?
So what you're talking about is largely private adoption rather
Yes,
than
it was a private
public
adoption
adoption.
service.
What
my
I'm referring to
understanding
is
is they had people stocking the maternity wards in the different hospitals, getting people to sign that piece of paper, so they technically had the.
I will follow Tori's lead and say I am not an expert on international adoption or private adoption.
This was like Phoenix, in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yes. Private adoption and public adoption of children that are in the foster care system are managed under very different policy structures and the like. So your experience, I don't have anything to add to.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for your tolerance on the time. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Schweikert. Mr. Blumenauer.